Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today on the channel, we are going to talk about my favorite tool for any kind of solo role-playing, any kind of solo adventuring game, or free-form adventure gaming, and that is the standard card, the playing card. And that could be a standard deck of playing cards or a special deck of playing cards designed specifically for gaming. And over the years, I have amassed quite a collection of decks of cards, and I think we're just going to kind of take a look at all of them in this video. This is going to be a very kind of low-key, cozy chat about my favorite tool in all of gaming. We're also going to do maybe a little bit of discussion on A Land in Peril, my solo RPG, my solo, I don't know if I'm going to call it an RPG. It's a solo game of questing and adventure. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's actually an RPG or not. Maybe, I guess it is. It's as much of an RPG as any other game, I guess. But we might discuss that a little bit as we talk about these cards, because I am developing my game to be as open and compatible with all of these tools as possible. And so what I've done is I have created a character here. I've done a standard warrior, Kragor, my standard warrior. And the stats in A Land in Peril, of course, are A, B, C, and D. We have athletics, brawn, concentration, and determination. And athletics is basically dexterity, agility. Brawn is your strength. Concentration is your intelligence, anything with mental. And determination is a hit point and a currency that you can spend to make good things happen, to keep progressing your character. In my game, one of the biggest differences in A Land in Peril with other games is that there is no character death in my game. Heroes don't die. Conan doesn't die until Robert E. Howard maybe wanted to tell the story that Conan died in. Elric doesn't die until Moorcock wanted to tell that story. Fafhrd and Grey Mouser don't die until Libra wanted to tell their story of death, and so on. And so that is one of the things that makes my game different from a lot of other games. But I thought I would have a character ready to go, and my little bifold collection of charts here. I'm thinking I might actually release a tri or quad fold super simplified version of A Land in Peril, because I have actually gotten a lot of use just out of these few charts. And I think with a couple other folds, I could actually make a really small and simple version of A Land in Peril that would be interesting. Let's do one thing real quick. Let's roll up a weapon for Kragor here, because one of the things that I like about A Land in Peril, one of the things that I'm pretty happy with, is just it's coming up with interesting weapons that have these keywords, and it's all based around a keyword system and a dice pool system. Very similar to probably something like Tiny Cthulhu or Tribe Cube Tales and Arkham Horror. Just a very standard D6 system here. And you roll up, you assemble your pool based on your stats. So if I was doing something that had to do with my strength with a brawn of 3, I would roll 3 D6, looking for usually a 5 or a 6 to be a single success, and so on. But let's do let's roll up a weapon here for Kragor, just in case we need it, just in case I decide to do a little bit of freeform playing during this video. Let's see. So we have a weapon type. Is it going to be pierce, blunt, or slash? 5. It is a slashing weapon. Okay, so we have a slashing weapon. Now I could randomize if I want that to be ranged or melee. Let's go for that. Let's do a ranged and melee attack here. Or ranged and melee. 3, it is a ranged attack, a ranged slash attack. Okay, so this will be some kind of maybe a boomerang. That would be kind of cool, like an edged boomerang. And is this going to be a fast or slow weapon? 4, a slow weapon. Okay, so we have I think that would be probably a one-handed weapon. It would be kind of a large boomerang. So I'm going to write boomerang, and we said that was a slash, so that's one keyword. And it is slow. and ranged. So this weapon now has slash, slow, and ranged as keywords. And so if we ever come across something that is weak to any of those, we get to add dice to our dice pool. If we come across something that is strong against those, we subtract dice from our dice pool. And the character always uses the same stat for, or the stat that you use for combat is based on your character's class, not on the weapon. So warriors always use brawn for their combat rolls. So we'll circle brawn there. And then I think we'll give them maybe a couple potions. Let's give them a potion of brawn and a potion of athletics. And so we can drink those potions to add 1d6 to a dice pool when we make one of those choices, one of those checks. So that's just a really simple way to create a character with a cool, interesting weapon in a land in peril. And I don't know, I might forget to bring Cragor into this discussion as we go, but maybe I will be inspired to do something and just kind of show how it works. But let's just start with this box. Actually, let's start with one of the newest things here and get this big yellow box out of the way. So this is definitely not a standard deck of cards, but this is a specialized deck of cards made for Morkborg, and this is called Portents of the Degloved Hand. And this is a really, really elaborate production here. I love it. So inside this coffin-shaped box, we have two very odd D4s that we can roll up to determine some of the things that we might need to select from these specialized deck of cards. So we have 4 decks of cards in here. We have a disaster deck, a disease deck, a destruction deck, and a death deck. And so these are kind of omens. These are things that might happen to your characters. And prior to an adventure or during a rest, a player may request a reading from a player that possesses a deck, or for themselves if they possess it. They will require sacrificing 1 omen. So in Morkborg, you have omens that you can use for rerolls and different things you can use to mitigate your luck. Or you can spend an omen in order to draw one of these cards. And then you will roll this D4 here to determine which deck you roll from. There's also here that you have if you're playing solo, you can roll this die here, this D4 here, for 1 or 2 draws. But let's say that we were sitting around a campfire in Morkborg, and one of our characters wanted to sacrifice an omen to draw a card from one of these decks here, and we would have the disaster deck. Okay, so we'll pull out the disaster deck here. I mean, just look at this production. It's totally off the charts cool. That's one of the main reasons why I did end up getting this deck, this box set here, because I thought it was so cool. The cards are really nice. They're large and tarot sized, and they have painted edges that match the color of the box they're from. Super cool. Okay, so we'll go ahead and shuffle this up, and we have drawn the Burning Water Skin. The water in your water skin, the water in a water skin you possess turns to lamp fuel. So does your urine. Okay, interesting. So now we are a natural source of lamp fuel. And hey, you know what? Maybe we could start a lamp fuel business. And we could go to the next town and start filling up people's lamps for them for a small nominal fee. That could be an entire campaign right there. So yeah, these are super cool. I'm not going to show too many. I'll leave the rest for your discovery if you own this, because one of the joys of a deck like this is just in that discovery. But I thought this was a really neat little supplement for Morkborg, and probably for some other games as well. Let's just start here with this box. And in this box here, okay, so we'll actually combine these 2 cards. So one of the games I covered on the channel a really long time ago was the Call to Adventure. And while I wasn't a big fan of the game itself, as far as a game that generates characters, I thought it was pretty amazing. However, that was in a very large, or not a very large box, it was in a medium-sized box, but I didn't get enough use out of it in order to keep it. But I did want to keep the cards. So I recycled everything that I could and just kept the cards here. And I think these cards are super, super useful for all kinds of different solo games and different kind of sandbox, open world adventure games. These small cards here have just a number of little prompts that you could use for a narrow escape or a Dark Lord's champion, inner strength, glorious victory, relentless, unlikely alliances, parting ways, surprise attack, instill fear, and so on. So very, very handy there. And then we also have some of these. These are kind of like bad guy cards here, enemy cards, villain cards that might give your enemies in your freeform games a kind of motivation. But the really cool cards in the Call to Adventure game are these large tarot cards. And they are separated into 3 acts. So you have kind of the beginning of your character's life, the middle part of your character's life, and kind of the end of your character's life. And these can be used to come up with some really cool prompts and just different things while you are playing, even before you're playing, kind of your pre-game, your session 0. So your character might start off as a performer or a pickpocket, a hunter or a noble. And then this is the deck that you would draw from to give them their initial push to adventure. What started their life as an adventurer? Were they spiritual? Did they excel in their studies? Win a foe's loyalty? Did they have the steel to survive? Enlist in the king's army, and so on. And there are some gameplay things here that correspond to the call to adventure, but you can just ignore those, or you can use those as little kind of, I don't know, little prompts, little icons that might trigger things in your imagination, these runes or something like that. But yeah, this deck is very, very handy. I think it's one of the most kind of inspirational character creation and character path decks. And so I would say if you could find a used copy of a Call to Adventure, and maybe you're not really even into the game to play it out of the box, a cheap used copy would probably be worth it just for these tarot cards here, for any kind of open world game playing or free form gaming that you might be into. And I kind of like that term, free form gaming, instead of solo RPG. I think it fits the kind of games that I think it fits the type of game better. An RPG to me kind of needs other people, and I think that's one of the beauties of an RPG. But a free form adventure game, a free form questing game, that kind of encompasses things that are part of an RPG that we might use in a solo game. And it also encompasses other things. Maybe you're using elements from a board game or from various other decks of cards and things like that. So I don't know. Free form adventure gaming, free form sandbox gaming. That's probably where I'm going to put a land in peril. So these are the pocket land cards, and I have a few decks of those. And these can be used to generate different kinds of landscapes. So we have this one here is all about the high seas. So we have shallows, we have deeps, and we have a kelp sea. And these are all kind of little subdecks. And you can combine these to create a landmass. So I bought all of these quite a while ago, thinking that I would get a lot of use out of them. But to tell you the truth, I haven't. I haven't really used these very much. I find them a little bit limiting in what they offer. I'm not sure. Maybe I should force myself to use these more often, and I might get more out of them. Maybe I will do a video just on these and a land in peril. Here we have the Marshes deck, and each of the decks does come with, I think, some things for another deck. I'm not sure. Forest. Where's the rest of the forest cards? I don't think I have a forest deck. I'm not sure. Maybe this forest card here is just part of this deck. This seems to have some different things going on. Swamps, dead forests, swamps, bogs. But these will be this question mark here. That will correspond to, here we have our icon list, our legend here. And so those will be locations. And then it'll be kind of up to you to determine what that location is. Now, there are some rule books that you can download for the Pocket Lands cards, and those can provide you with some more information on how to use them in your games, and what the different symbols mean and what they could mean. And then this is an older version here. This is an older version of the Overland Travel rules that you might be able to download as well. But I don't know. These are okay. I think the art is really nice on these, and that's probably why I bought them. Mostly was for the art. I just don't get them out as often as I would like to, or as often as I thought I would. These kingdom cards here, we have hills. Oh, there's my forest. Okay, so the marshes probably comes with a forest that has a combo forest, marsh, bog, swamp on it. So you can kind of have a transitional card. If I was a betting man, I would bet on that being the case here. We have mountains and more swamps there, roads and grasslands, and then shallows. This is probably the most useful of the Pocket Land cards. And again, you can't fault the art. But yeah, for some reason, I thought I would use these a lot more. I'm going to force myself to use these more, just so I can make sure that I am happy with still keeping them. And then one of the first sets of cards I got when I was really kind of kicking the dungeon dive off were these pixel loot cards, and there's actually a few more here. These would probably be the ones that I would want to sell the first, or want to get rid of first before anything else that I own. I was using these quite a bit when I first got them, but they've kind of fallen out of favor a bit, and that could just be because I don't take them out very often, and maybe I should. You know, when you start getting too many tools, it's easy to overlook things that you used to find useful, right? But these Dungeon Maker decks are kind of interesting. You have different rumors for a dungeon, and then you have these different symbols down here. And that could be a split path, a locked door, some kind of magic portal, or an enemy. So split path, straight ahead, some kind of trap there, a treasure. So I guess you could use these to generate a pretty cool dungeon. And I think the rumors are kind of neat because you could pick a few different rumors. So you could go down the line here. We could say that a dungeon can be found beneath the ruins of a city that was originally built by a warlock's minions as a shrine, but a magical disaster has trapped them inside. So that's pretty useful to come up with some kind of a little adventure there. And then the Overland cards, I like this Overland Travel deck. Actually, these are pretty useful now that I think about it. Again, it's just you start getting an abundance of tools, and you just forget about how one might have been useful. But these Overland cards I used in my kind of first big series on solo RPGs on the Cymbeline Isle. And these have some different things that you can reference for overland travel. Different things that might happen during the day, during the night, how much time it took, and just kind of a random thought for a prompt. So if you were traveling during the day and you wanted a random encounter, you could say, here we have found on the side of a well-traveled road, some children are selling berries from a homemade berry stand. 1 copper piece for a bag of delicious berries puts a smile on the children's face, but any player who eats them becomes violently ill in a few hours. So maybe you could say, well, I wonder if my character would know. A GM might know that using that as a prompt, but when you're playing a solo game, would your character know that they're poisoned? And so you might want to do an intelligence check. Well, in A Land in Peril, we would do a concentration check because concentration covers all things mental. And so Kragor here only has 1d6. And how hard would it be for us to notice those berries? Well, we could roll up a random difficulty challenge here, and we could roll 2d6. So we have an 8. So an 8 from 5 to 9, it's a normal. So we need 5 up on a concentration check, and we only need 1 success, we'll say. So let's see if Kragor knows that these berries will poison him. A 5, yes. So he recognizes the berries maybe from a plant that he used to harvest in his youth, and he ate some as a kid, and he knows not to eat those berries any further. So there's a little role play prompt for you. But yeah, so these could be used for all kinds of things. I think these are pretty useful. And the deck that I didn't find useful, or the decks that I didn't find very useful, were the loot decks. And they're just okay. I think I found them a little boring. This is kind of some mundane items here. And then we have some weapons and some magical items and more mundane items and things like that. But overall, I think these are okay. I remember being just a little bit disappointed in them. I thought they were going to be more inspirational, I think you could say. And then here in the last deck in this box here, we do have the Morkborg, the Demon deck, the Endless Demon deck. We've taken a look at this before, but this is such a cool deck of cards. We have 3 sub-decks. So we have the head, we have the torso, and we have the legs. And I got this from Drive-Thru RPG, and I don't remember where I got the pixel cards. That was, I think that might have been one of my earliest Kickstarters, if I remember. And this was definitely from Kickstarter here. But we can create a random demon by drawing a head, a body, and some legs. And that'll give us everything that we need to face off against the hooded warlord of the maze here. It'll give us a special power, how much hit points they have, their gold, their value in silver if we capture them, their morale, what kind of weapons they have, and a special power. So super, super handy deck to just come up with a really cool bad guy with not a lot of effort and even less thought. So I like this deck quite a bit. Okay, let's check out this kind of random box here. So this has some standard playing cards in it and a few decks of playing cards here. So I like using playing cards when I'm playing games. I like it when different books might have lookup charts and you draw a card and you look up what that is. I like it because there are 4 different suits in a standard deck of cards, and each one of those suits can represent different things and in different games. But there are various tools that you can use along with a standard deck of cards to generate random things. And I like how the 4 suits can be used to represent different things. Maybe the heart represents NPCs, maybe the diamonds represents urban or things that might happen in an urban setting. The clubs might be dungeon settings and the spades might be wilderness things. So it's very easy to create kind of subtables for reference when you're using a standard deck of cards. And then the face cards can be more powerful and so on. So just a really handy tool. A standard deck of cards is one of the most useful tools. And it's always fun to get kind of thematic decks of cards to use. So, when I'm playing a fantasy game and it calls for a standard deck of cards, I might turn to my Frazetta deck, and that just adds a little bit of spice. And the Frazetta deck here, we have all of the face cards do have art. The normal numbered cards are kind of boring, so that is a little bit of a disappointment with this deck. But there are all kinds of really cool standard decks of cards that you can buy to use as a tool to help augment your games. This deck here I've shown on the channel quite often, and this is something I might use for science fiction or a horror game or something like that. And just this really nice kind of dark and spooky deck of cards here. I got this one on eBay. I got the Frazetta deck on eBay as well. I don't think they make the Frazetta cards anymore. And this is a really nice deck. It's called the Virtuoso deck. Very, very high quality playing cards. And people really like their decks of playing cards. And you can get really nice decks through crowdfunding. And if you're looking for some really nice, high quality decks of cards that feel really good to add to any of your games, look up cards that are used for cardistry. And cardistry is kind of a subset of sleight of hands, kind of a subset of magic. But it's not doing tricks where you are tricking people. It's handling cards, fanning, and you're doing waterfalls, cascades, and different types of card manipulation in your hands. That's called cardistry. And they make all of these really nice decks for cardistry competitions and stuff. So really handy there. And then sometimes a game will make a standard deck of cards, and it'll also double as a tool, as something for that particular game. So this is a standard deck of cards. So you have all of your suits and your numbered cards and your face cards, but you also have the things that you need to play Colossal. But again, these could be used for any type of fantasy game. You might find a staircase, a treasure. Someone needs you to find something, an item. You're calling the dead body and another item. So this is a really handy deck of cards for any kind of whimsical science fiction or science fantasy or fantasy game that you might be playing. You can use this as an oracle, and you can also use this as random numbers and random suits to roll up random encounters. Super, super handy. I love this deck of cards here so much. This came with the original Kickstarter for Colossal. I'm not sure. I know he has continued to expand on the game. I haven't been paying much attention to it, but I'm not sure if this deck of cards is still on offer or not. But I was very, very happy to get that. This deck of cards here is just a Twin Peaks themed deck of playing cards that I got quite a while ago. I got this on Etsy, and I was really happy with this because of that game Little Town that I recently covered, that solo game based off of Twin Peaks. And so this was a really nice deck to use with that game, because that game does use a standard deck of cards to determine some outcomes and to generate some of your adventures. And then one game that we have taken a look at before is Loom from Shield Dice Studios. And I do have a couple other decks of Shield Dice. Let's see. We have this one here. And do I have another one? This one here. So Shield Dice, friend of the channel. Shield Dice is a Dungeon Dive patron, and I cover their games. I've purchased their games, and they have also sent me their games for a cover. So we have kind of a mutual beneficial relationship with Shield Dice. I love their stuff so much. And this was a deck of cards that is themed around Loom. And Loom is a game that we have taken a look at before. A kind of text-based adventure. It's kind of a computer text adventure game on your tabletop. I really liked Loom a lot. I love that weird kind of stark digital nature of Loom. And this is just a basic Loom themed deck of cards, and this could be useful for all kinds of different things, different prompts. And anytime you're playing a kind of dark fantasy game, you might want to use this Loom deck. And I believe this is available on drive-through cards. And then this is also a system neutral grimoire that Shield Dice created. And this has just a whole bunch of spells in a deck of cards. So if you ever need some random spells, you might want to check this out. So let's give this a shuffle here and see what we find. Let's take this card here. So we have Wither and Wilt. Plant life within the area except taller trees, withers, and dies. Effects: plant life within 30 feet. Cost: natural spirit is angered. Renew. Sleep in a forest grove. Okay, so some kind of magical ritual there that affects plant life. And then here we have corpse talk. A corpse will repeat the last sentence it uttered in life. Effect: corpse. It only works once. Cost: smell like death for a day. And to renew, bury a deceased ally. Ooh, creepy. So yeah, just a neat little kind of grimoire deck if you're looking for random spells with weird spell effects. And then this deck here from Shield Dice we have taken a look at before, but this is the Campaign Creator deck. And again, these are all available if you go to DriveThruRPG or DriveThru Cards. And then this deck is separated, or you separate this into 3 sub-decks, I believe. I haven't used this in a little bit. We have green, blue, and red, and each one of these will be different things. So we have setting and lore, problems and solutions, secrets and objectives, enemies and allies. And then you get your instruction cards here, and then you will build your campaign using these cards, as well as a roll of a d6 on a sub table on each one of the cards. Very, very handy. I think this, coupled with their sandbox creator and their scenario creator, you could very, very quickly and easily roll up an entire campaign with scenarios, with different kinds of conflict and so on. And then these 3 decks we have also taken a look at, and these were all from Philip Reed. And Philip Reed, I mean, this guy is just an absolute machine. He maybe puts out too much stuff. I can't even keep up with the amount of things that Philip Reed puts out. But this hex deck is really cool for quickly generating a hex crawl here. And you will have a hex with numbered hexes, and then it'll have a key on the back. And so you can easily put together a nice little hex crawl. I don't know, let's see if we could draw one at random here. Mixed up the rules there. So you do get some rule cards as well. What do we got here? Okay, so fairy lights. The dense woodlands is inhabited by thousands of tiny sprites and fairies. They are quite mischievous, playing tricks on any who visit. Okay, so maybe we are up here in hex number 1. Fairy lights at night. Thousands of points of light flicker in and out among the trees. The many fairies and sprites that live here will make the party's life hell if they foolishly try to sleep here. So we're trying to sleep, and these fairies are kind of dive bombing us, and maybe they are poisonous, and we need to try to escape these angry fairies, and we need to kind of brush them away and dodge them. And so Cragor here would need to make an athletics check. But let's see if let's see what keyword these fairies are using for their attack. I guess we should have also rolled up on our boomerang. Let's also give it an element at play here. So, all right, 5. So our boomerang is a lightning boomerang. Okay, so lightning. So now our boomerang is slash, it's slow, it has range, and it is imbued with lightning. So that lightning keyword can come into play here. But let's see what kind of fairies these are. These are 4. These are cursed fairies. So these cursed fairies are trying to dive bomb us. We don't have anything to help us with curse. We're not strong against it, but we're also not weak against curse. So I think this would be an athletics check of 2. And let's say this is a hard check. So I would need a 6 in order to pass this athletics check here. And no, a 3. Okay, so because I lost that roll, I would actually lose a point of determination. So my determination would go from 6 to 5. And now that I've spent my point of determination, I can narrate what is going to happen. So I don't have to keep rolling dice to avoid these fairies. I don't have there's no chance that I'll die against these fairies. I just have to now I am forced to narrate what happens. So I get stung a few times, and I'm not feeling very good because they keep trying to, they keep, it's like these little micro doses of curse or something. As if they build up too much, then maybe my character will become fully cursed and might lose one of his stats until he gets better. But I'm able to find some brush to dive into, and the brush covers me, and so it protects me from the fairies or something like that. And so yeah, so these are just really handy to come up with some nice little, you can combine them to come up with a larger hex map. And I think one of the ways that it does encourage you to use them is in group play. You can deal out a few cards to each player, and then as a group you can make your adventure. And I think that's a really cool idea, because I always like it when a group RPG, when a traditional RPG encourages that kind of collaborative storytelling. You know, all of a storytelling in an RPG shouldn't just come from the GM, and all too often we see it just come from the GM. And that's kind of a disappointment. And then we've taken a look at these before. So these are NPC cards, and you might have various NPCs. These are NPCs that reside in an inn, and these are patrons of a market. And they will give you certain things about the NPC. So you might have just a little story and something that you can use to generate some prompts with. So very, very, very handy. And these are all available on DriveThruRPG or DriveThruCard. I think DriveThruRPG, and you just buy the card deck. I wish they wouldn't separate DriveThruRPG and DriveThruCards. And that is probably my only complaint about DriveThruRPG, is when you have cards and books in your order, you actually have to split them out and do separate orders. But let's take a look in this box here. So this box here contains one of my newest little decks, and we just took a look at this, I think as of today, as of the recording of this video, I think just a couple videos ago, but that was from the Grey Gnome Games from the Gnome Pack from Jason Glover. And this is a little Oracle deck that he created for the just for all kinds of different games. And I think this is a really, really cool little Oracle deck because we could have, let's see, we could come up with a really quick scenario here. So let's say, what are we trying to do here? We are trying to retrieve. Okay, so we need to retrieve let's see what we need to retrieve. We need to retrieve a wand. Okay, so we're retrieving a wand from a sanctuary, and it is protected by a troll. So there we have our adventure. We have been asked by some wizard to go and retrieve her wand from a sanctuary, and that is being protected by a troll. And the troll has been, maybe the troll is also or maybe we were asked by a maiden. So we were asked by a maiden to retrieve her wand from a sanctuary, and it's being protected by a troll. And the troll, the wand is an antique, so it's very valuable to the maiden. And so if we are able to come up with or able to solve this quest, then she will greatly reward us with a lot of gold or something like that. So yeah, really cool deck of cards here. It does a lot with just a handful of cards. The nice thing about a Land in Peril, using this deck with a Land in Peril, is Jason Glover's games are D6 based, and so is a Land in Peril. So you could use these cards for any kind of dice rolls that you have, which are very handy. It also has a yes/no oracle, but of course I also have my oracle here. So we could say, is the maiden trustworthy? And so we could randomize these, and we're going to draw 3, and we'll go straight down the column, because in my oracle we have the yes/no column, we have the plot twist column, and the twist focus column. And I am going to be releasing a one-page oracle soon that uses this table here, as well as a chit system that you use a bag pool system. So let's see here. So is the maiden trustworthy? No. Okay, so the maiden is not trustworthy. So I'm going to actually let's do a dice roll. Let's do a dice roll. I want to get variations here. So is the maiden trustworthy on a roll of a 1 to a 6 and a 3? No. Okay, perfect. So the maiden is not trustworthy. Is there a plot twist here? We'll look at a dice roll. 2. No, there is no twist here. Maybe we came up with a 6, and it would be, yes, it's a positive twist, and then that would coincide with an NPC. So maybe if we retrieve the wand, the maiden will join us on our journeys, and we can take advantage of her magical powers or something like that. So very, very handy here. These decks of cards in this little box I've taken a look at before, but of course we have Philip Reed's Outdoor Encounter decks. Super, super handy. One of my most used tools. I absolutely love these cards. I've mentioned them over and over again. These you can get on DriveThruRPG, and these have great art and little write-ups, and they're system agnostic, and these can be used for any kind of fantasy overland adventuring. I love this deck of cards so much right here. This is all 4 of them in one large deck. And then we also have the original Labyrinth cards. So these are Philip Reed's cards that are made for the fantasy trip, of course, and these are all for your dungeon encounters. I wish that they would make a huge deck of the dungeon encounter cards like this newer deck of the outdoor encounter cards. I think that would be very, very useful, and I would definitely want to. I think he might have done something like that recently. Again, I think Philip Reed, I love his stuff so much, but I really do think he puts out too much. It's impossible to keep up with, and I see so many releases from him that I just kind of stop paying attention. It would be almost a full-time job to just cover what Philip Reed releases. The Axbane's Deck of Many Dungeons, I got this from GameCrafter. Super, super handy deck for creating dungeons with traps and interesting encounters and loot and all kinds of things. So again, a very, very handy deck that we have taken a look at before. And then the final deck of cards here is another cannibalized deck of cards. And so this deck here is actually all of the location cards from Warhammer Fantasy RPG 3rd edition, the one created by Fantasy Flight, and the one that came with all kinds of board game-like components. And this deck of cards here, once you combine everything from all of the various expansions for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 3rd edition, you have all kinds of really super cool fantasy locations that you can use to build out a map or to build out any kind of random encounters. Mysterious caves, wharf district, a mausoleum, an audience chamber, a merchant's wagon, festival grounds, noble's mansion, a treasure vault, a steep cliff, a rowdy tavern, a cart, crumbling ruins. And then on the back of each one of these, you have some information about it. So the crumbling ruins, ancient stone walls crawling with green vines and feathery lichen loom above you. The ground is scattered with fallen stones and low scrub, concealing uneven flooring, which is treacherous holes. Watch your step. Okay, so we need to navigate these crumbling ruins, and let's see how dangerous these crumbling ruins are. So we will roll up our difficulty challenge here. That's a 2d6. I rolled a 10, so it's very difficult. So this is very difficult terrain. I need a 6 or higher, or 6 up in order to navigate the crumbling ruins. And that would be an athletics check, which is a 2. I will go ahead and drink my potion of athletics. So that will add a d6 to my pool here. And no, we don't do it. Okay, so I would lose another point of determination on this journey, bringing my determination down to 4. And now I would have to narrate how I overcame those ruins. And then we also have a little bit of a mechanical prompt here that corresponds to the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 3rd edition, but we can always translate that to whatever system we are using. But these are very handy. And man, I have so much stuff for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 3rd edition, and I really need to get to it at some point. I think it's a really interesting system. It's flawed, but super, super interesting. And it comes with so much neat stuff. Okay, so it's a few boxes down. Let's take a look at this one real quick. We won't get into detail on this box here because I have covered most of these in detail. But these I all got on Amazon, and these are all of the Inkwell decks of cards. And these are insanely useful. I cannot overstate that enough. These have so many uses and so many different decks. They're constantly making more and more, and they just provide a lot. So we have some NPC decks here. So we have Coastal Townfolk, we have Henchmen and Hirelings, and we have Frontier Townsfolk. And here we will have a whole bunch of NPCs. You will get their personality, their quirks, their needs, their secret, their leverage, and their background. And then maybe their name and what they are. And so you have all kinds of different NPCs. These are really, really handy for coming up with NPCs on the fly. And then we have all of their side quest decks. And these will give you a quest with a location and all kinds of other things. So on one side, you might have a map that corresponds to that quest. Of course, it's not to scale. Very hard to use for gaming, but it just gives you an idea of where this takes place. And we have Braving the Elements. A water elemental has moved into a farming village and is submerging the farmland, destroying the crops. To ward off attackers, it has surrounded itself with sinking swampy muck that is difficult to get through. Okay, so for a quest, the farmer has asked us to take care of this water elemental. And then on each one of these, you'll have ways to getting the PCs involved, different kinds of encounters that you might have on this quest, and follow-up ideas to connect it to other quests. So these are super handy for coming up with quests on the fly. And we have monster hunts, we have high seas and pirates and ports adventures, coastal town quests, Lovecraftian and paranormal adventures, pulp adventures, and then we have dungeon, caves, and ruins adventures, political and urban fantasy, and wilderness and frontier encounters. So very, very handy. These I am always using, and I love that there are different decks for different genres. I know there are some science fiction ones as well, but I don't play a lot of science fiction games, so I haven't yet gotten those. Maybe I should, and I can use them more. Maybe it will encourage me to play more science fiction games. All right, let's go here. So these are some of the earlier cards that I bought, and these were featured in some of my first solo RPG videos, and I got these all on Drive-Thru RPG or Drive-Thru Cards. And here we have the GM Assist decks, and I know these were super popular, and they still are. And you can get these in various themes, fantasy, kind of cyberpunk, or not cyberpunk, but steampunk, science fiction. And this is a deck of, I don't know, 50 to 60 cards, double-sided, which is really nice. So that means you double the amount of cards. And these have all kinds of different Oracle prompts and Oracle solutions and all kinds of different things that you might need while you are playing. You have your various dice rolls from a D4 to a D100. So if you don't have dice handy, you can pick one of these numbers here and roll your dice. So in the upper left corner, we have different ways, different oracles here for yes, no questions, likely odds, no, yes, yes. We have different runic symbols that you can use, elemental and runic. We have keywords, avenge, feral, pain. And then we have things that correspond to hearing, seeing, touching, and smelling. So we have our sense table there. We hear the fire crackle. We see strange fungus. And we touch leathery wings beat against our face as we're walking through this cavern, and maybe some giant bats have swooped down. And we smell the sickly, sweet decay of rotten death or something like that. And then we have some more icons that might be used to trigger certain things, some belongings, a catalyst, names, virtue, a vice, and a location. So super, super handy. I think this is kind of the standard fantasy deck. And then we also have, this is kind of a steampunk deck. And there are various themes of these decks that you can buy. And you also get rules with those, and the rules go into really great detail on how to use each of the sections. And these are just really well-designed cards. They cram a ton of useful information onto the face of a card in a very useful way. And you don't need to spend a lot of time trying to determine what each thing is. And this deck of cards here, or these decks of cards, I should say, the Encounter Builder cards, are kind of like these, but broken out into 4 different decks. And I have taken a detailed look at these before, so we won't spend a lot of time with these. But we have locations, traps, combat, and decisions. And these also come with a really nice instructions on PDF that you can read in order to learn more details about these. But the location deck is pretty cool because we have 4 different types of locations: building room, a small structure, a cavern room, and an outdoor area. And then you have your room details and your secret door details. And so if you're trying to come up with some locations on the fly, these are very handy. I use these quite a bit, and I use the trap deck. I like the trap deck a lot. Let's draw a random trap here for Kragor to overcome. I will take out a few cards here, shuffle them up, and let's take that one here. And we'll take this side or this side. Let's take this side. Okay, a caltrop room. Description: caltrops cover the ground in this room. Okay, it's easy to see, so we can spot them. Maybe it's not completely dark in this dungeon caltrop room. So let's see if I can spot them. It's easy. I need a 4 up. To spot them is a concentration roll. I have 1d6, and I rolled a 6. Okay, so I spot the caltrops. To overcome them, it's easy. I think that would be probably an athletics check. So I have 2 dice. It's easy to avoid the caltrops because I have seen them. So again, I only need a 4 up. And no, we don't do it. Okay. So we failed quite a few rolls here. So I step on some caltrops and I lose another point of determination, bringing me down to 3 there. Now you can always spend determination 2 to re-roll or to add dice to your dice pool. Determination is a currency, and you can spend it all the way down to 0. And once you hit 0 determination, that's when you need to start worrying about your fate. And I'll talk about fate in a different video. It's a system that I'm still developing. But the trap cards are pretty handy. And then the combat cards, I know I have received some positive comments about people who have used these combat cards, because coming up with combat ideas when you are playing solo can be somewhat difficult. And with these, we have two sides to the card. So we have our attack details. What are the details? The difficulty is a moderate. Strategy targets the closest. Intent is to fight to the death. Discover something about the attacker is a moderate chance. Special abilities. These enemies launch attacks that lower the fortitude or endurance of the PCs, and then hit them with magic or effects that cause the PCs to make a fortitude or endurance tests. And then it's a wanderer large, a wandering band of large creatures. How many of them and what type? So very, very handy. I know that coming up with ways to have interesting combat encounters is possibly one of the most challenging things about solo adventure gaming and solo kind of open questing. And then here we have our standard Oracle deck. And a lot of this information is also covered on these GM assist decks. But we have your chances, odds of yes. We have your dice rolls from a D4 to a D10 or a D20. No D100 on this one, but you would just draw 2 and say that, so this is 10s, so 65, and so on. Some different things about randomness. If you need to determine your difficulty at random or a direction, if there's any loot, an event, an attack type, event type. We have attacks. We have hurt long, hurt short, help short, 1 NPC negative, help long. We have different types of details, adjectives, and nouns, and then some different quests here. So maybe a quest is so-and-so hasn't been seen in a long time. It's like they just vanished. Find them. Okay, so we could come up with who so-and-so is and maybe where they are in order to find them. So yeah, these decks are pretty handy. And then this deck here was the original deck from the Story Masters Tales, a little kind of a game book that the game really fell flat for me. I know a lot of people like them and they have been expanded on a lot. There are so many entries into the Story Masters Tales, Storyteller Master. I can't remember exactly what they're called. It's been quite a while. But this deck here is just a really cool Oracle deck for generating stories and events for any kind of dark or kind of maybe a fairy tale like fantasy. And I use this quite a bit. I'll just draw something and come up with some kind of prompt. And I like decks that just have cool images because they can very quickly inspire and spark my imagination. And then this deck here, this is the Oracle deck and the Encounter deck created by Perplexing Ruins, and this is for Fallen. So we have these enemies here. So this is an enemy deck here, and then here we have the Oracle deck. And this is a fantastic Oracle deck, such a great Oracle deck. And it has a lot of cards in it, and the cards have a lot of information. You will have 2 different images, and those images can spark your imagination. They can spark an encounter or a quest. We have different types of keywords, and then our yes, no Oracle. Very, very handy. This is a great Oracle. I think these are all sold out, but I think you can get digital copies of this and make your own, I think. If you just go to Perplexing Ruins, just look that up, either on his itch.io page or Alex's or Alan's his main page, his main web page. And then these are all creatures that you can face off against in Fallen. And you could probably use these for other games as well, but they're specifically keyed for Fallen, whereas the Oracle deck is not specifically keyed for Fallen, but it is keyed for that kind of setting. And maybe using those in a game of A Touch of Evil, you might be able to kind of turn A Touch of Evil more into a game of open questing, of open adventure. All right, so we're almost done here. Let's see, what else do we have? Taking a look at that, So these I recently took a look at, and I have a whole video on these, and these are the Oracle Story Generator cards. So we have a side quest deck, we have contracts and bounties, political intrigue, epic adventures and relics and artifacts. And each one of these is in a subset of cards that you draw from and put in order. And then you can roll on each card has a D4 subtable. So you can come up with more variations on your card draws and coming up with different types of adventures. These are pretty handy. They were a little expensive. I think the whole set here was about $50 or $60. So maybe too much. And maybe a little overkill when you could just roll up on some subtables, but when you like cards themselves, I think these are pretty handy, and they are something that I turn to. We have, let's see, I think we have 2 more boxes. And in this box, we've already taken a look at these 3 decks, and that was the Pixel Loot. So we have these. I rarely use these. I was kind of disappointed with most of these, I think. This deck here is pretty handy. I know you've probably seen this also on Paul's channel, Stone Axe, but this is another NPC deck. And I think that came with this, the Deck of Stories. I got rid of the boxes because the boxes weren't very handy. So we have the Genesis Box Deck of Stories. I got this on Amazon. And this does also come with those NPC cards. And this Deck of Stories, you will have different cards that correspond to the word orc, and it is ORC, and you put those in a certain order, and then you can generate your stories from these, and you'll get what the story is so far, and then what your next steps are. So I don't use this very often. I will sometimes use the NPC deck to just come up with an NPC quickly, because you get personality, a quirk, a flaw, a goal, and a secret, and then you'll also get how they look. So that is pretty handy. NPCs is one thing that can bog down a solo game, having to generate an NPC. So having them on a deck of cards where you can quickly draw one out and get everything you need for them can be really handy. Then this is a heroic challenge deck. And I rarely use this. I was really disappointed with the rewards. I thought the rewards deck was going to be more like treasure, more things that the characters use. But the rewards are actually things that the players use, like a celebratory coin or statue made to honor your achievements automatically succeed your trading or crafting check. Permanently improve your ability to sing or trade, double the results of your strength or attack roll. So they're kind of like these cards, you get these rewards for overcoming these challenges. And it's kind of like having a little coin, like what were the little tokens in D&D 5e? What were those used for? Advantage tokens, inspiration. So these cards are kind of like advanced inspiration cards. And the different challenges here will be work as a team to recover from or prevent a fatal injury, or ignite or freeze an object or creature, trick or divert a monster. So these could be handy to come up with prompts, but this deck here, this heroic challenges deck, and I actually bought this from a brick and mortar store from around the table in Linwood, Washington. And I very, very rarely use these, but they are so small that it is easy to keep. And then these 2 decks we have taken a look at a long time ago. These were some of the earlier things I bought when I was just starting to get into solo role-playing. And that is the Outlander decks. We have the Quickening, the Deck of Random Encounters, and the Deck of Random Encounters. This is quicker random encounters, and these are kind of larger random encounters. And these are really nice cards. They're kind of big and chunky. And we have red and green cards. So we have combat and non-combat encounters. And the text is very small, but you can read that. And then on the back, it'll give you some more information about that encounter. I think these are pretty cool. I like the types of adventures it comes up with. They're kind of whimsical and weird and a little kind of odd, I guess you could say. And then the Quickening deck here is just a deck of really, really quick encounters that don't have that kind of complex nature about the encounters in the regular deck. And these are from Vendors Decks. And if you just look up Vendors Decks, you can find their website and you can get those. Okay, so that was that box there. And we have one more box. And I think that's it. All right, so here's this box here just has all of my 4 Against Darkness cards. And these cards are all keyed specifically for 4 Against Darkness. And I purchased all of these from Drive-Thru Cards, and it's fun playing 4 Against Darkness using decks of cards. They have really cool art, and we've taken a look at some of those before. In this box here, I have the cards for Tribe Cube Tales. And Tribe Cube Tales is a game that I still need to do a detailed look at. It's a really, really cool system, especially for solo one-off play, for just doing small little adventures. It has a lot to offer. I love the system because it uses D6, a lot like my system does. But this is the deck of cards that you will use for solo play, and it gives you different types of challenges and different icons that you can use. And there are rules for solo play. This is a really handy deck. And then depending on some of the adventures, some of the encounter settings also come with other cards that you can get for different characters. These are all not needed at all, and I don't really use these, but I find that this solo deck of playing cards is really, really helpful. And Tribe Cube Tales is just a fantastic little game. I love all of the micro settings. I really, really need to get on a video for that. I'm just so far behind in my coverage. You meet in a tavern, you die in a dungeon. We've just recently taken a look at this little deck of cards here, along with the zine for this game. And this could be a very handy deck for coming up with dungeon rooms, a well, and some things you might discover in a well, and some different tags, some different keywords and hazards, and a loot table there that you might find some different loot in these various dungeon rooms. So coming up with a dungeon quickly, this is a really handy deck. It's always nice to have things that can help us facilitate adventures and make those adventures quickly. Dungeon Solitaire is an interesting game, and you need the rule book and you need a printed deck of Dungeon Solitaire tarot cards. And the game is pretty interesting. I still haven't done a video on it, but the deck of cards you will have, it's not a standard deck of cards, it's a tarot deck of cards, so it's expanded. I am not a tarot guy, so I don't know everything about the tarot deck. I don't know what these are called, minor arcana, major arcana, so I'm not even going to pretend to say, to know what I'm talking about when it comes to a tarot deck. But these face cards, maybe these are the arcanas, I'm not sure, but they all have really cool names and images that you could use to come up with all kinds of prompts. And I like cards that just have random images on there, just so you can kind of come up with things on the fly. But this is used for when you're playing the official game of Dungeon Solitaire. And then this was one of the very first really small indie games I bought. And this comes with a little book, and it's called A Quiet Year. And this is a game all about drawing a map and creating a settlement after some kind of cataclysmic event. And these are separated into your 4 seasons. So we have a subset of cards for winter. We have a subset of cards for autumn, a subset of cards for spring, and for summer. And you play through a year, and each one of these cards will give you a prompt and a choice. And the players around the table or solo, you will read the card, you will respond to the prompt, make a choice, and then draw something on your map to show how that has impacted your settlement. But this is a really cool little deck of cards there. This is the original deck of outdoor encounter cards that we took a look at before from Philip Reed, but these were specifically keyed for Fantasy Trip, and he's taken these, expanded them, and made them system agnostic. We've already taken a look at the campaign creator. This is a standard deck of cards made by Alexi, what's his name? Alexi Apparin. And they do a lot of art for 4 Against Darkness and for, of course, the Pocket Land cards, the Geomorph cards. And this is a standard deck of cards that also corresponds to a bestiary for a supplement for 4 Against Darkness. But great art. And again, I got these on Drive-Thru RPG. And our final deck of cards here is the deck of cards used for Lichdom, a solo RPG about boundless ambition. That's the full name of that game. And these were sent to the Dungeon Dive for a review, and I do need to get on get to that. That game sounds really interesting. It's a journaling RPG game about being a lich and questing for immortality. And so these are a standard deck of cards, but it also has some different types of keywords and images that you might use to play Lich, or you could use also as prompts for your own kind of solo gaming. So yeah, wow, that was a long video. Thank you for those of you who have stuck with it to the end. I hope you liked the little kind of land and peril solo questing asides during this video. That was fun, but I am trying to design my game to be as system agnostic as possible, so I and other people can utilize the tools and things that we've already have in our collection. And we don't need to buy a whole bunch of new things to play a land in peril. And I really think I am going to work on a kind of quad fold, super simple version of a land in peril. And that might be a lot of fun. That might be kind of the way I introduce the game to other players. We'll have to see. So, all right, you guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.